Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Savage Tech Man. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. I'm Ed Ciucevich, a.k.a. Savage Tech Man, and once again joining me on the podcast here is Scott Schreiber.
Hey.
Welcome back.
And
sir. The news is, at the recording of this, when we're recording this, we're about to go under a mandatory evacuation in the county I live in here in southeastern Georgia for Hurricane Irma that's coming in a couple days, or it's going to swing by this area. No one knows. So this episode's a special episode. It's going to be the regular quick episode, but we're not making light of anything of, our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who may be impacted by this storm. Of course, everybody who's been impacted by Houston, by Harvey. And the weather's just crazy, but it got us thinking the other day as we're thinking about preps. Scott was over here and we were chatting, and we said we should do like a top 10 weather disaster movie countdown. It's kind of started as a disaster movies,
yes.
and we have painstakingly mulled over our list. Yours is even more extensive than mine.
Yes, if we had all disaster movies, the list would probably be a top 50. But so we said, let's with the hurricane coming, let's narrow it down.
And so the rules that we put ourselves under the criteria. These are weather disaster movies, okay? So there'll be no alien movies like Mars Attacks, any of the War of the Worlds movies won't be in here. There'll be no Signs with Mel Gibson. Those are some of my favorite ones that'll show up on disaster movies.
And most sad for you, I think, was No Independence Day, right?
No Independence Day, because that would have probably topped my list.
Yeah.
And we also include, since it's weather related, no zombie movies like
Shaun of the Dead, I Am Legend, those kind of apocalyptic movies we kind of had to set aside here for this topic.
No fire, so we don't have the Towering Inferno.
Yeah, that's tough to not have on there, but
and here's one that some people might argue with us on, but no icebergs.
No icebergs. Sorry, Titanic. We just had to we were more focused on storms, I believe.
Right. And there's no X-Men on here. So but anyway, so that's kind of our ground rules for this episode. So just to get that straight there. And Scott, I think you're going to kick us off at number 10 here.
Yeah, let's lead off with one that some people might say, really?
Why is this here?
But I think it's an underrated movie, and that is Kevin Costner's Waterworld.
And I agree. It's kind of Mad Max on the water.
Absolutely.
And at the time, I remember seeing it's been years since I saw it. I've seen it several times since.
I definitely went to the theater to see it.
But with all the, if you believe in global warming,
Absolutely.
we're all looking for a piece of land. And like Lex Luthor said, they're not making it anymore. So if you can find it, instead of looking, it's kind of the opposite. So Waterworld's at number 10. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, in the scope and the scale, I mean, on how they made that, they were basically in, the ocean for all that shooting, and I like Dennis Hopper as a villain. It may not be one of his better roles, but he's always fun as a villain, and I think it's as far as weather goes. You can't go wrong with the world just completely void
flooded.
Of land.
Yeah. Global warming. There you go. Let's see. Number 9, and I fought hard to get this movie on the list when we were putting our movies in here.
Go ahead and reveal it, and
San Andreas with The Rock. Okay, and some people might go, oh, "Really?" I'm like, I liked it because I don't. Yes, it was formulaic, but I really enjoyed it. And my wife Cheryl, she totally loves disaster movies like I do, and San Andreas had the earthquake, so that's how it starts, with an earthquake.
Right, and we won't see any other earthquake movies, I don't believe, on here. Neither one of I haven't. I can't speak for yourself.
Yeah.
But the 1974 classic Earthquake, I've never seen it, so I couldn't even put it on there. So
it probably came on when I was 4 years old, so I don't think I really remember it. But the 70s had a lot of disaster movies. Airport.
Yeah, the Airport trilogy. Yeah,
the Airport trilogy. Then it spawned spoofs like Airplane and all that, but those aren't weather disaster movies, so they didn't.
No, and I think there are merits to San Andreas. The visual effects are incredible. I will say that. It's just for me, as you said, it was formulaic. It's kind of like it kind of mirrors other scripts that I've seen before, but it is fun. Visual effects are great.
Yeah,
and it's the prototypical disaster movie.
Yeah. So,
and next we've got one. The first 3 here. There's kind of a theme here. There's a lot of water, a lot of boats in these first 3. And this one's a little more obscure. We're going back to 1998, and it's called Hard Rain with Christian Slater and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. God was in there.
God, yes. God was trying to steal an armored truck full of cash.
Well, and Morgan Freeman. He was trying to get it before Miss Daisy got it, I guess. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah, Hard Rain, and that was one when you brought it up. I was like, I remember liking that movie, and I love weather, so I'm infatuated with the weather like I am with sound and everything else. But
it's a fun, unique movie. I remember enjoying it a lot when I saw it in the theater. Again, not well reviewed, I don't think, but it's a fun movie. I can't think of another movie like it. Can you think of another armored truck heist in a flood?
Only when I play Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah.
But let's see. Next on the list, and this one, it's formulaic. Is that a new word?
No, formulaic.
I'm not gonna say that long word.
Formulaic.
Next, you're gonna have me doing math, and this is no math zone.
But man,
the Day After Tomorrow, and one that got left off the list was 2012, which was really over the top with John Cusack.
It was Cusack, yeah.
Cusack. And they're kind of the same movie to me in a way.
Essentially, I think this script, Day After Tomorrow, is a little bit better. Yeah. I think there's more to the emotional level. Gyllenhaal, separated from his daughter, I believe, and that's then a theme that reiterates in San Andreas.
Some of the science in it for me was a little bit hard to believe, but you kind of go into these movies suspending some of that.
You have to suspend disbelief, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I like it, and it's number 7 on our list. Now, this one I guarantee is probably not on anybody's list
except for mine,
except for yours.
and I loved it. It's honestly one of the best films
from 2011
that it's one of my favorite films of all time, and it's called Take Shelter. Now, it's not your big budget blockbuster with visual effects, and I mean, really, it's about an impending storm. So it's a psychological thriller starring Michael Shannon and Jessica Chastain. He starts to have these visions that he thinks a storm is coming. And so nobody believes him, but he's
wow, the son. He's not the son of Krypton, but because General Zod,
right? Yeah. No, he's kind of
so
the
his
Chicken
planet
Little.
wasn't going to blow up. Well, then maybe it was. Maybe this is a Krypton movie.
No, not at all.
No,
he's this Chicken Little of the story. Nobody believes him, and he starts to build a shelter for his family out back, and people think he's crazy, and it just kind of escalates from there. And in the end, I won't tell exactly what happens, but it's worth the payoff. It's one to go check out. It's not your big blockbuster, but
It's worth seeing.
absolutely, and it's weather related. Storm, psychological, directed by Jeff Nichols, incredible filmmaker who just did Loving and Midnight Special last year. He's one of the best new American auteurs out there. So check that one out.
Okay.
The next one I think everybody's seen, and hopefully everybody can agree on.
Yeah, Alive.
Absolutely.
It's about the were they soccer players? What were they?
Soccer, rugby. I believe they're Uruguayan, maybe Chilean, but yeah, they were a rugby team.
In that case, I'll say they're Paraguayan.
Yeah, why not?
But yeah, they crash land on a mountain basically, and then there's some wonderful cannibalism that comes along because I mean, it was based on a true story or relatively true story.
Yes, it's based on a true story starring Ethan Hawke is the main face that people would recognize in it. But yeah, when I think disaster movies, I just that one just comes right to mind. It's in the 90s. It's kind of in my era, and yeah, I mean it's and it kind of delves into the survival aspect more so than a lot of these other films. It's like, what do you do?
What would what would you do?
What would you do? Yeah.
What are the links of the human will to survive? That instinct in us. So I wouldn't last long. I would totally be like, I'd panic first, and then, and then we'd crash. And then everybody could feed off of me for a long time, I'm sure there. But
then our next one is a classic. It's the oldest one on our list. It is the most nominated as far as Oscars go. It was nominated for, I believe, 8 Academy Awards.
And I think it had a lot of stars in it.
A huge cast. Ernest Borgnine, Shelley Winters was the one that was nominated for an Oscar, and that's The Poseidon Adventure.
Right, not the remake. Poseidon.
Not the remake. Let's be clear, not the 2006.
The original.
Correct.
And yeah, it was kind of up there. One that didn't make it was The Towering Inferno, and I always kind of put those two movies kind of together in my mind. But The Poseidon Adventure definitely earns a spot on the list here, and of weather disaster movies. And
yeah, it's really the quintessential ship at sea disaster movie, isn't it? I mean, it's maybe
and
the
one of the
first
reasons I won't go on a cruise unless it's over land. So,
right.
But yeah, The Poseidon Adventure. There's not a lot that can be said about it that hadn't already been said. I mean, it was just so well done for the time. I think it's aged okay, you know, but even the remake on it, it was okay, but it just wasn't the original. There was something about the acting, the script in The Poseidon Adventure, and just, that first time seeing it. Not on this list as Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That would be Aliens, but yeah, I'm rediscovering that movie from my youth, and I think I'm going to go back and watch The Poseidon Adventure again, and really appreciate it for what it was and what you were working with back then. This is pre-special effects.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Like I just marvel over how they do some of those things, where they overturn the boat and everything's upside down.
Right.
I mean, it's just brilliant stuff.
It's amazing for the time that they were able to make it look so realistic.
Right. 1972 is when that came out.
Wow. I was 2 years old, so, some of you out there weren't even born. You don't even know, but you should check out The Poseidon Adventure. It's a movie you have to see. Let's see. Now we're into the thick of it. Coming up on some of the worst disasters. We've gotten. Let's see. We've had water. We've had earthquakes.
Snowstorms.
We've had water again. Water seems to be everywhere.
Well, when you think about weather, or what constitutes most weather, and it's
rain,
rain,
water,
absolutely.
But we're looking at number 3 now, and this is you're gonna have to help me with this. I know what this is. Okay, I thought it was The Happening for a minute because we were talking about The Happening, and I absolutely hated that movie, and you have a totally different.
I do. Maybe we should go back and watch it, and
yeah, but it didn't quite qualify under what rules are for
you
this
mean
one.
Plants Taking Over the World didn't qualify. Oh, man.
It's not a Poison Ivy movie, so
There we go.
I'm Batman. But
number three.
Number three is The Impossible, and it was about the terrible tsunami that happened several years back, starring
Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor. An amazing movie. Naomi
really
Watts.
was based upon a true story.
Yes, they play a family that's vacationing, I believe, in the Philippines. I believe
Was it Philippines or was it? That's not where the tsunami.
or
Was it
Thailand.
Indonesia?
Indonesia.
I think it was Indonesia.
Do we have to get our facts straight?
No, just insert. Okay, I'm gonna go beep, and then everybody insert what the true thing is. Beep. Okay.
There we go.
So
So
that's
now
the
we're
country.
factual.
Now we're factual.
But yeah, it's the true story. It's this family that goes on vacation, gets stuck, and the tsunami hits while they're there, and the family gets separated.
Right.
In the elements, and it's this amazing story of them finding each other and coming back together. Naomi Watts' best performance of her career in my mind. I do not understand how she did not win the Oscar that year. Does not make sense to me. But yeah, it's like the best acted film on this list. Just amazing techniques in getting the disasters filmed. Like I saw behind the scenes thing with director J.A. Bayona, another hard thing
Insert
to
name.
say, right?
Yeah.
He just his last one, he just did a Monster Calls. He's got, visually he's brilliant, and but they built these little sets, of course, like most of these disaster
Right,
movies
and
probably do. They build the sets and they flood the set. I mean, it was
Right. Like
very,
a miniature kind of.
yeah,
Or,
they build the miniatures.
Yeah.
And it's just incredible. And it was so realistic. I think that's the thing. It's like the most realistic.
Like the tsunami felt like a character in the movie. It was a character in the movie, and it was that impending doom that you could not escape from. And I mean, there was literally, for the people who lived through that and unfortunately died. I want to say it was around like 120,000 people died. I mean, it was massive.
Again, beep. Insert facts here,
Insert facts with the number of people that
or at least
perished.
your alternate facts.
Or your alternate facts, yeah. And so anyway, yeah, before I go off on a tangent there.
No tangent.
But The Impossible did the possible, and it was a very good movie. It was well acted, and you really felt for that family and the impossibility of them in this country that was foreign to them, fighting language and fighting, the elements, obviously,
Absolutely.
to get back together. And he had, I think, 2 sons.
Right. They had 2 boys, yeah.
2 boys, and it was just Ewan McGregor, one of his best performances.
Absolutely. And it actually, one of the sons in it, the oldest son, is played by Tom Holland, who's now Spider-Man.
Oh my gosh! So Obi-Wan Kenobi saves Spider-Man.
It all comes back to
Superheroes for me,
doesn't it?
It's like me and my wife got me watching years ago Downton Abbey, and I kept asking her during the show, I'm like, well, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? And she said, I bet you if they had capes on, you'd know who they were. And I'm like, yeah, I would,
probably.
or name tags.
But yeah, as far as like one last thought on
Sure,
The Impossible, I think more than any other movie on here, it has the message of hope. And it actually has that positivity to it, and that we can persevere and we can survive, and that's what makes it great.
Yeah. I want to make a Star Wars reference and say, the Jedi are all about hope.
Okay, well,
okay, there it is.
You just did.
I just did. But
now, moving on to number 2
yes.
is one of these that we both
Totally
definitely agreed on.
on.
It's why it's near the top, and I know you're a big Mark Wahlberg guy, and one of his better movies, and that's The Perfect Storm.
Yeah, The Perfect Storm, and George Clooney. I like George Clooney too, and I read the book on this, and I'm sure there's people out there that never say a movie comes as close to the book, and I'm not. It's been a while since I read the book, so I don't remember that. I just remember watching it, and my dad loved sailboats and all this and that, and these were the Gloucestermen of Boston, and they had the accents down, and you felt. The good thing about this is the characters, and the what they go through to survive, and they don't have a choice to as like George Clooney to turn the boat around when he should have.
And it doesn't forget about the people at home either.
Very good point. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. You have the characters on land. They're like, there's one guy and he's trying to get with this lady and she's not having that basically. And she ends up missing him and all that. And, and it's such a tight knit group of people. And I think it was very representative of those fishermen. And I'm sure there's women that do that now, too. But surviving this, it was the perfect storm. It was this front colliding with a hurricane. And we can understand that, with everything going on. Absolutely. But I remember being in the theater, and when I left out of there, I felt like, or during the movie, I felt like I needed a raincoat on.
Yeah.
And imagine if they put that back in theaters with the technology we have now and in the cinemas.
And the sound systems.
The sound systems.
The sound design of that film is amazing.
Yes, the sound. I mean, that's one of the things I loved the most about The Perfect Storm is that I totally felt like how Avatar made me feel about 3D, where I just forgot I just felt like I was in that world. And that's the only minute they've ever done that in 3D. That's kind of how I felt about The Perfect Storm. It really had that sound. And when we get to our number one, I'm gonna tell you that also agrees with that.
I think probably half of these on our list, half of them are nominated for best sound, half of them are nominated for best visual effects, and you have to have those elements when you're perfecting a disaster movie.
And I don't know how they filmed The Perfect Storm. I'm sure I watched it in the DVD, the Blu-ray, whatever, and saw it in theaters, of course, but I love the performances. There was hope in that, and there was this determination, man against nature. I just thought of a movie that probably could have went online with this, but Moby Dick. But that was different.
Yeah.
But The Perfect Storm was just about a perfect movie for a weather person. Such
right.
And I love the sound,
but not as much as our number one.
Yeah, our number one. I think after we eliminated meteor strikes and alien invasions, which knocked half of our list off of this particular weather disaster movie top 10, we ended up on this one, and the sound design on this is totally an actor in the movie. And the movie we're talking about is Twister from 1996.
Let's see. Twister was 90. Oh, goodness. You're dating us here.
I'm sorry.
95.
95? 96? Okay.
Pretty sure it's 95.
Beep, insert,
Yeah, but again, it's like it's in that wheelhouse of our generation. Right. It's like in that iconic vision of the cow,
we have cows. We have cows. And yeah, Helen Hunt, I loved the interactions and with was that
the late great Bill Paxton.
Yes. And you believe those characters that they did. That's Philip Seymour Hoffman, who went on to even better roles. I mean, I liked him in the back. There's so many people in that movie that were so many great actors. And I can't think of the scientist that was kind of their adversary. But he did a wonderful role of just kind of being a jerk. But the lady that played their aunt, I just love the story of that. And like when her house gets destroyed, it's so heartbreaking. And
it just hit me. Carrie Elwes, The Princess Bride. He was the doctor.
He was yes. And the sound of this, I remember the director talking about the sound, how he created, because I was watching, I think I probably owned the VHS of this and the DVD and the Blu-ray, but it just, as much as like The Perfect Storm, Twister, you felt the roar of that hurricane. It sounded like a monster. They made it sound so ominous, and you really, when that Cat 5 hits them, is it Cat 5? Is that what they call it in tornadoes?
I would imagine for this movie, it was probably a 5.
Yeah. But
it's a movie.
It was like, and yes, were there unbelievable things like the cow going around? But
I'm sure that happens. I've never seen it.
but I'm sure it happens.
But yeah, I mean, Jan de Bont, the director, he's a great action director. Yeah, definitely had visions on the sound and everything, and I believe the screenplay written by Michael Crichton as well.
Yeah, I think I think it did. It was there a book to it?
I don't think so. I think
there
that's
was a
one
book,
of the rarities where he just wrote the screenplay, not
but
based on one of his
it's
novels.
kind of one of those guilty pleasure movies. I could watch
Absolutely.
it any day,
and that's why it's number one. You
yeah.
can put it in and have fun and watch it, and have a. Take your mind off the real hurricane or real tornado in that case.
Well, yeah.
Or hurricane in our case, but.
Yes, but which can spawn tornadoes too. But, yeah, Helen Hunt, I just loved her and Bill Paxton's interactions. And I want to call the lady in there Aunt May. I know it's not Aunt May. That's Spider-Man.
Played by Lois Smith.
And I think she was in True Blood on HBO in later years, which she got killed off pretty quick on that series. But
not sure if she was or not.
She was. Yeah, I think she was. She was Suki's grandmother.
She was Stack. Yeah, she was her grandma.
Yeah, right. But what a wonderful actress, and you just really felt the warmthness and just that family community of people that are actual weather chasers, and there's so many people that really mourned Bill Paxton were in the meteorological community. I remember seeing something on the Weather Channel where they were talking about Bill Paxton and in that movie, and not to really say it's something so great, but the thing about it is it elevated storm chasing. It made it look cool, even though those you don't get those rare opportunities like all the time. A lot of people have died chasing storms, but that's something that me being fascinated with weather, I would fancy myself to be a storm chaser, but as soon as I got even close to it, I know I would just panic and run the other way.
And that's why you're evacuating, right?
That's ouch. Well, that and I want to live. But everybody has their choice. But yeah, and so that kind of concludes our list. But I did want to reiterate that we're not poking fun at anybody or that's suffered through any tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes or fires or whatever. We really do sympathize with you, but we thought just to take your mind off of things, maybe while you're evacuated, you'll hear this podcast or you'll hear this episode, and maybe it'll make you think of, like, after 9/11, and I'm going off on a quick tangent, but there are movies like that, it reminds you of things, but these movies are less serious. Some of them are more serious and some are less serious. But if we can act out those on the big screen and see, our fears of earthquakes, fires, floods, whatever, and all that, disasters, then and somehow it takes our mind off of it in real life and some of the hard things we're going through. So, this is meant in the best possible spirit. So,
absolutely. Be safe out there and take care of others.
And stay dry, because apparently a lot of water's in this list here. So stay dry, stay safe, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, Savage Tech Man. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes, see us on YouTube, be part of our Mixler chats. Thank you. See you again on the Geek Homeworld podcast.